Hello and welcome to Afroshine Live. I am Claude Shawadi, and thank you again for the time you take to watch this show, as well as the comment you make, the question you ask. This is all about discussing and showcasing the business and professional excellence in our communities, and we also talk about topics that are important for the development of our African Australian communities. And today we will be discussing marketing secrets for business success. To discuss this important topic with me today, I have Dr. Samuelson Appau from Melbourne University. Dr. Samuelson Appau, how are you today?
Thank you. I'm very well.
All right. Thank you for being with us tonight. I know you are such a busy person, so we appreciate the time that you give to this show. Before going into our topic, I would like to ask you a couple of questions in relation to the George Floyd incident. It is something that is still in the headlines everywhere. It is obviously an important matter. The whole world is actually reacting to this. What do you see this going?
Well, first of all, good evening to everyone. Thanks for having me, Clyde. I think I should check with you how you're also doing. Have you been well in this lockdown?
Yeah, I've been doing quite well, man. It's been a difficult thing, but thanks God, we're still alive and we're still thriving.
Yes, absolutely. And good evening to everyone who is watching as well. And good morning if you're watching us from elsewhere around the world, whatever time of day it is. And just a little clarification as well. My affiliation is with RMIT University. University.
Actually, thanks for that. Even though you are involved with Melbourne Business School.
I am. Yes. Thanks for the question regarding George Floyd incidents and reinvigoration of the Black Lives Matter movement, the protests that we are seeing and in many cities in the U.S. and all over the world. I think there's two things that's very obvious. I mean, police brutality against Black people, discrimination against Black people, racism is something that has been around for centuries, and the fact that George Floyd's unfortunate death has highlighted this to mass conscience of people, to the extent that people see that this is no longer acceptable, and we're starting to see mass protests, mass consciousness around this than we've ever seen before. The Black Lives Matter movement, or even if we go back to the civil rights movement of Martin Luther King, or all the people who are fought against all forms of discrimination. And we are from Africa. We've also seen things against anti-colonization and African thoughts. We've seen all these things. It's been going on for a while, but this local moment is something that shaped thing where we're seeing young people of all color just get on the street and said, no, this is not right, and we can do better than this. So on one hand, it shows that this is a canker. Racism is something that has been around and continue to trouble us even up to this point. But it also reveals the good in people. And it helps us, it makes us trust humanity, that there is a good in humanity to speak up against these forms of injustice. So that would be my quick thought. Not of whether this would lead to any lasting change.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Yes, that is a different topic altogether. And my experience as a Black man living in Australia, and some of the unfortunate experiences of racial discrimination that I've had. It's sad when you experience it, and it's one of those things that it's a low moment to be able to when you go through something like that. So I think that, I guess a short answer would be there are many things that can be done, but I think going forward a long time, something has to be done in terms of representation. Usually when you see the Black body, or a Black person, the depiction of a Black person is not usually ideal. These perceptions about Black people being dangerous or being aggressive and therefore requiring a considerable level of aggression from police and so on, and all the other things that we see people do or say to Black people, these are things that nobody is born with racism encoded in their DNA. These are things that people observe, learn.
Mm-hmm.
So that at that level of socialization, we should change that. And for me, that is what matters. You know, and I'm as a marketing person, I can speak directly to the issue of, if we see many businesses and brands got involved in Blackout Tuesday,
Mm-hmm.
many we support Black Lives Movement. But if you go to these companies and you look at their hiring policies, and if you look at their executive boards, you know, they don't have Black representation there. So it's important that we walk the walk and change these things in terms of representation, so that when other even Black kids and white kids, when they look up and they see they see Black people in positions or in places of respect. They see them as humans. They see them as kind, as human, just like they are. And I think over the long term, that would help. But in short, I'm hopeful it will get better.
All right. Well, is there anything that is different? We're gonna go into our topic in just a moment. Is there anything that you think is different this time? Because everywhere, whether it's in Europe, even in Africa, people are protesting in relation to George Floyd incident. What is it that this time? Obviously, it was quite an obvious and hideous, act of violence against that man. But this has happened before. Why is it so different this time in your view?
Well, there are many reasons why, and I'm not an expert on racial issues. My only expertise is my experience as a young Black man. So
Mm-hmm.
what I think is different this time is, the conditions seem ripe. We were in a lockdown, and so many people have been home, and
Yeah.
there's this. So a lot of us now live our lives online and have access to these type of content. There is also the economic recession, and there's a lot of disappointment in terms of leadership around. So all these things are there and may have fueled it. Now, if you look at the video, there's been many videos of police brutality against Black men, but when you look at this one in particular, it's horrific. This is things that you think happen in movies. It's
Mm.
just absolutely terrible to see this happening. To see, a white policeman with his hands in his pocket, kneeling on the neck of another human being. It doesn't matter what color this person is, but it's just, I still can't get that image out of my mind, Clyde.
Mm.
I still can't get that image out of my mind. So I think it's just, if you put aside all the contextual macro issues that are happening, if you look at this one in particular, and images are powerful, right? We know how advertising can change people's perceptions. You are a media man, you know how powerful media narratives are. So these
Absolutely.
images that people saw, it is just brutal. And so then we are seeing that there's a level of response. Now again, if this would lead to drastic changes, I am not too confident, but I'm hopeful. I'm
All right.
hopeful to the extent that other people who usually are entrenched on this matter are getting in on this and changing their minds a bit. But on the other hand, we also have police meeting protests with more brutality, which makes you
Yeah.
wonder. So it's a complex conversation, Clyde, but let's hope that it gets better.
It is indeed a complex issue, but hopefully there will be some change happening this time around. Now, let's go into our topic today, which is about marketing. And for those who are joining us right now, Dr. Samuelson Appau is a lecturer at RMIT University. He also runs a business program with Melbourne University that focuses on African Australian small businesses. So we'll be talking today about some marketing secrets for business success. And I would like to encourage you as you're watching to make comments. Please ask questions. We will get the guests to answer some of your questions later. We know that marketing is actually very important, not just in business, as I would say in life in general, because you ought to be able to present whatever you're doing, whatever your messages you have, whether it's to your spouse or to your friends or to the society broadly. You need to be able to communicate well so that you can get what you want. Is that a fair assessment what marketing is, Dr. Appau. Tell me.
You're right, Clyde. You're right. There's marketing is in every aspect of our lives. So you are
Mm,
absolutely right that marketing is crucial. Is crucial, particularly for businesses. Now, that the usual perception about marketing, or the thing that we associate with marketing most often, is communication,
mm-hmm,
uh, advertising, presentation, all those are things, and it is important. It is an important aspect of marketing, because that is the communicative aspect of marketing. It is a
mm,
representative aspect of marketing. But marketing broadly, it involves a number of activities and practices that lead up to communication. Now,
mm,
when you go to communicate, what you go to communicate, that is also part of marketing. So when we
mm-hmm,
talk about marketing, I think the one word that for me defines marketing much more much more finitely is value.
mm-hmm,
So for me, marketing is the creation, pricing, communication, and delivery of value to a certain consumer consistently, over and again, and above that of competition. So that if I'm to give a broader definition, so in that regard, then marketing is not just about what you communicate, but it involves what are you communicating, and how are
mm-hmm,
you wanting this to fit into the value, into the life of someone. So to that
mm,
extent, it's that is why it goes beyond business to include politics, because politicians have to sell themselves to us and their vision and what they have. In life, you even when you go for job interviews, yes, in
mm-hmm.
that moment you're marketing yourself as well. So all that is crucial. So yes, you're right. But in the end, it comes down to what is the value, what is in it for the person that you're marketing to.
Okay, now, um, why should people pay attention to marketing, whether in business or in life? What would you tell people why they should pay attention to this topic?
Well, Clyde, in short, there's a difference between success and failure when it comes to persuasion.
Mhm.
There's no joke in marketing that having something that you believe is great and not being able to market it is like winking at a girl in the dark. Only you know what you're doing.
Mm,
So so the reason why marketing obviously is crucial is that it's for, and I'll speak in terms of business, is the lifeline of a business. Say you start a business tomorrow, where you are renting truck, and
mm.
I use this precisely because because I know you would find that salient,
I got a
right?
business that rents trucks. Yes.
Exactly. Now, your truck. The goal here is to get somebody who has a need for a truck to be able to come to you and rent the truck from you every
Hmm.
time that they need to rent a truck. But what's more, you want them to come to you and not somebody else, because you're not the only one who rents trucks, and you want
Hmm.
them to come to you. What do you do to achieve that is marketing. Your ability to do that well would mean the difference between you being able to succeed and do well with your business and you not being able to do that. So the tricks of the trade, in terms of how you get to the customer and say, to know who needs the truck, that's one. To go to them and convince them of the use and why your truck services are better, to actually deliver on that truck service, and when the person needs it, to get it to them for the truck to work and for them to have a good experience. And even afterwards, for you to be able to maintain that relationship, that the person comes back to you. All this is marketing. If any of these processes, or any of these practices breaks down, your business might be in trouble. So if you
Mm.
fail with marketing, usually that is like pulling the plug off of your business. You're taking away the oxygen, and we know what happens when we take away the oxygen from anything.
Well, death follows. All right, let me remind again our audiences, please, we would really appreciate if you can just make a little comment telling us where you're watching from, and whatever else comes to your head about this conversation. We would obviously would want you to make comment and ask questions later if you want to, but just let us know where you're watching from. That'll be appreciated. Now, let me ask this: what are some of the most common mistakes that people make in marketing their businesses?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Lots of mistakes that we make as in marketing, but I think I will highlight just three of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first one would be thinking that you are your customer. Many times marketing people think we're selling to ourselves, and so we think that what we like, what appeals to us, what makes us happy, what excites us, if it looks good to us, then the customer would like it. Now that is obviously very wrong. You are not selling to yourself, you're selling to your customer. So
Mm-hmm.
it is important to have an obsession with your with customers. What are they like? My general rule of thumb is you want to know your customers so well that you can be them. Then you can have a little bit of a confidence in being able
Mm-hmm.
to my customers will like this. But just this general perception that, well, this looks good to me, it might look good to the customer. So first, you must be obsessed about the customer. You have to speak to the customer. You have to study the customer. You have to ask them questions. You have to observe them. And when you do give your product or services to them, or they use your services, follow up, ask them how it went, and always be willing to tweak your services to be able to suit them. If you have an obsession with the customer, you almost always won't fail, because it always begins. Look, your goal is to sell to someone. If what you're selling is not salient or relevant or does not resonate with the person, you've missed the mark. So don't start off by thinking that if you like something, then it's amazing. Always make sure that you understand the customer, that
Mm-hmm.
you know the customer, that you've spoken to the customer, that you are interested in what the customer has to say. If we are able to do that, even as we get bigger, because that's another thing, as businesses become bigger, we
Mm-hmm.
operational mindset sets in, right? We build a number of processes that handles things, and then a
Mm.
customer becomes just a number, forgetting that we
Right.
are dealing with people who have actual needs, and what we are doing is giving value to meet their needs. So always be obsessed with the customer. Remember, the customer is more or less almost always dissatisfied and wants more. If you do that and you're obsessed with the customer, you will always be on top of how to keep the customer satisfied. That's one. The second thing that is related to this is we also undercook our product and services.
Mm.
There's I've seen this. I've worked with enough small businesses to see how this happens. There's always this rush to go to market. As soon as we have a product or service, we are like, oh, I want to advertise this. I want everybody to hear it. You need to take, especially for small businesses, take the time to learn about your business, to learn about your customer, and to learn about yourself as a business person. What
Mm.
works, what doesn't work. If you rush to go too big, when you fall, your fall would be big. And so it's dream big, start small, start now. But give
Mm.
yourself the opportunity to learn about your product and services, and then be able to build from there. That way, when your growth actually happens, you'd be prepared for it because you know your product and you know your service well. So be obsessed with the customer, one. Two, give time to build up your product or your service. So with again, taking your truck rental business into perspective, Clyde, you want to make sure that you start with one truck, obviously, and as you rent it out to people, you find, okay, when people come to rent truck, what are the different processes that they go through? How can I
Mm.
make it easier? How can I improve the experience? When people come to rent a truck for me, what are they trying to do? It's not the truck that they want. They want to be able to move things from A to B. And
Mm-hmm.
while they want comfort, well, how can I tweak my service in order to be able to do this better? Maybe in addition to just the truck, I should be able to add this and take this away. I should change my price in this way. I should change my communication this way. Maybe the people who often come to me, they come through this type of community. Maybe those are the type of people that I should look at more. So you
Mm-hmm.
give yourself the opportunity to learn and keep tweaking your product and service so that you grow. So that is the second thing. Then the last thing would be a bit more deliberate. People are not deliberate about their brand. So usually, of course, when we start a business, we want to make sales so that we'll be able
Mm-hmm.
to stay alive, right? So if you're not
Sustain.
making sales, you're in trouble. So
Yeah.
we care more about making the next sale rather than worrying
Mm.
about our brand. Remembering that in the long term, it is when you have a successful and a brand that people love that will keep you going in the long term. You
Mm-hmm.
know, if you take, the popular brands, if you look at the products that they sell, they are not necessarily better than that of competition. If I took Nike, Under Armour, Adidas, Umbro, Puma, and you strip off the logos from them, people might not be able to tell the difference between the products. But then
That's
people
right.
love the brands. Somebody will swear that I'm a Nike person. I always love my Nike. But the point here is that the love is for the brand and less the product that is related to the brand, because these businesses spend time to build their brand. So I would always encourage you to be a bit more deliberate about your brand and the reputation. No, that is what a brand is really. The reputation you're building for yourself and your business. If you invest more in that, in the long term, you'll be way more successful. But if you focus more on sales and less about your brand, it becomes more transactional. So you're thinking,
Mm.
how can I sell? How can I sell? But that will not sustain you in the long term. What you want is from the same people buying more from you over and over again. And those people will be willing to then spread your good news about how great your business is to other people. That's the best form of advertising. So, three things: be obsessed about the customer, take time to learn and build your product or service, and be deliberate about your brand early on.
Well, that's very good. I'm actually getting a free marketing lesson for my business right now. So that's very good. Now let's go to the next thing. You talked about knowing the customer, and that's actually a very difficult thing. At least, I mean, for small businesses that have very limited resources to undertake, studies or market research and all that sort of thing. What's the quickest way to kind of have an idea? Because I suppose you want to understand the psychology of the customer so you can offer the best value, isn't it? So how do you go about that in a straightforward way?
Clyde, it doesn't take a lot of work. It's just having the intent to do it. So I use your example of truck rental. That's why I've not gone for big business, right? I'm using something like, you buy one truck, say I'm renting a truck. When you start in terms of, for example, thinking about your customer, usually when you start this realistically, you start with people you know. That's how
Mm.
businesses start, right? Your friends and friends of friends. You may post it on social media because that's what it's easy, and say, look, I've got this service. You may do some product placement, where you can get permission and park your truck at a certain place and put a rental note on it. You can hire this truck for this amount of money, and so those are the basic things that you do in the beginning. So your business will
Mm.
start very small. Every customer who comes to you, whether they are a family or they are a friend or they are a friend of friend, always when they come to you, ask them, how was it? What did you like? What did you not like? What can I do better? And what can I do
Mhm.
to make your business again? That is the level of obsession with the customer I'm talking about. Set that as a business culture from early on. This is marketing right from the beginning. And so if you do that, and as your business grows, you build systems to be able to keep doing that.
Okay. Looks like I've lost your sound there.
Oh,
Okay.
you hear me?
Wait a minute. I think I've lost the sound. I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
I'm not sure why we've lost the sound. Let's see if we can uh, have a look at that in just a moment.
Can you hear me now?
Just a second. We'll just
Hello?
video of the Black Lives Matter while we're looking at the issue of the sound. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hello, Clyde. Hello. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Okay.
I can't hear you if you can hear me.
Okay, now I'm back. You can hear me, Doctor?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, good. All right. We apologize for this technical incident that has interrupted our show, but we're back to normal. You were talking about the ways of understanding the customer to be able
Yeah.
to offer them the best value. If you can just continue on that.
Yes, I think we had a mini lockdown on our
Yes.
on our connection right there.
Corona on the computer.
Oh, absolutely. And now we are having an easing of restrictions, so that is good. We are back at it.
That's right.
Yes, I think before I was talking to you about thanks Mimi. Mimi said she can hear us now, so I think
Yeah.
people can hear us. So you're asking how a small business that doesn't have a large budget can do this. So I was
That's
talking
right.
about in terms of the customer obsession, how a small business can do it. Like very early on, you build this culture of always asking the customer, what can I do? And when the person does that, you listen to it and you do it and you communicate back and say, I took your advice and this is what our business looks like now. We'll always be happy to have your business again. And we enjoyed having you the first time. People like you or, customers like you make our business better. It looks like a lot of work, but this is something that you can do simply. And when you do this, anybody who has run a business will tell you that early on, much of your business will be repeat customers. And much of your business will come from customers referring other customers to you. So when you have this obsession, it shows the person that you really care, and it's not just transactional, and you care that that you're able to deliver on the value promise that you said you would, and you're willing to improve. So that's the first thing. Now, when it comes to improving your product, that ties into it, right? Once people tell you that these are things that you could do better, it's not a complaint. Many times when people complain about products or services, we get upset and we go into defensive mode. But that is free market research with people telling you that you can tweak this or that about your business, and it's free. It's you're not paying. This is free. People are telling you that you can change this, that, and that is wonderful. And when people don't complain unless they care. Even if they are angry, it means they care, because the people who don't care, they don't say anything to you, they don't come back. Bye-bye.
That's right.
And they just spread the bad word about you. So when people come to you and you take on board these ideas and you improve your product or your service, and so that's how it ties into the second. Being deliberate about your brand, these first two will tie into it. Because a brand is, again, as I said, is just the reputation around your business. So if you do all these things right, then you build a reputation among your customers that, oh, this is someone who cares. This is somebody who cares this way and that way. And so what that means is that automatically your reputation as a business gets better. And if you're able to stick to it consistently, that builds. Now, things like having a logo, color palette, brand design, those things are good, and you can afford to do it these days. They don't cost. You can put it on, if you can hire an expert market design agency, you can put it on Fiverr or Airtasker, so somebody to do that for you, right? And you have it. But those things are just representations of your brand. As you do better as a business, those things become more powerful. To put it in retrospect, 30 years ago, the Nike logo didn't mean much as it means today, right? The reason why it's become more powerful today is because of all the wonderful things they've done to grow their reputation, and therefore the logo as a representation of the brand is powerful. Your brand is not your logo, it is what you do to make your logo visible and desirable.
All right, now let's go into the case of African Australian small businesses, because the thing that actually got me to think of inviting you in the show is to see how we can help small businesses owned and managed by African Australians to do better, because we tend to see that many of those businesses tend to stay at some sort of level, some sort of ghetto business. It doesn't go up high there. So, what do you see as some of the issues that is affecting the African Australian communities in terms of how they market their services, they market themselves?
Clyde, a wonderful question. And this is a question that I'd done research on during last year. You were part of the people that we brought in for our focus groups when we did research. So, as part of the Blue Now program, we went around speaking with African Australian entrepreneurs. We also spoke to community leaders and so on, to try and understand what really the challenges are. So this is more. This is a combination of my own, experience as a marketing person, and again based on the research that we did. Now, the first thing that we found was we tend to have, and again based on the research, we tend to have a local small business, stay small, feed my family mentality. So it starts off with there is a lack of desire to do more beyond making enough to be able to meet my daily needs. And we know that this happens because if you go to many countries in sub-Saharan Africa, we know that there are many entrepreneurs, many sole proprietors who dominate our informal sector, whether they're selling, vegetables or trade goods, just maybe on tabletops and so on. And they make enough sales on a daily basis to take care of their families. And so when people move into Australia, there tends to be that mindset as well. So what happens is that people go into business as a matter of necessity. I didn't have an education or to be able to get a job in a firm, and so let me start something on the side. That's what's typically the case that people do it in the informal sector. So it starts off first with a lack of orientation to build a business, build a brand out of it, and go big. So that's the first thing that is. So we have few people who are very deliberate, that they actually had an idea and said, this is an idea that I think would grow, and I have plans to build it. That is missing. I think if we're able to change that, that would be great. We need more people, be more deliberate business people than people who are just hand to mouth, kind of, let me just sell this and make enough money to just take care of my family. That's one. The second challenge that we have is that we tend to have what I call a homogenization of businesses. Essentially, in simple English, most Africans in Australia tend to do the same type of business. So there is a stereotypical African business, right?
Yeah,
restaurants,
absolutely.
Food and restaurants, selling, local products. You have supermarket that sell food from Africa, selling food stuff, beauty and art, and the hairdressing, salon, and so on. We have these typical. So what happens is that we are almost always competing among ourselves. Almost all of us are doing exactly the same thing. And interestingly, we are all targeting each other. So if you find most African businesses run by Africans in Australia and you ask them who really their target market is, whether they know or do not know, it comes down to the same thing. They're trying to sell to other Africans. So there's not too many of us living in a country where we've got millions of people, and we are almost all, and with different opportunities, we are almost always doing the same type of business, targeting the same group of people. So we are cutting each other's throats, we're cutting each other down. What instead we could do differently is to place ourselves in the different positions at different points in the value chain. Let me put that in perspective. So, for example, instead of 5 people going into restaurant, if one person was in the restaurant business, another is in food delivery, the other person is in finance, accounting, and credit card processing. The other person is into food stuff and farming and supply of farm stuff that they would use to cook. And maybe the other business might be into something like, brand design and advertising. What happens, or maybe even, food, restaurant supplies like cutlery and so on. What suddenly happens is that instead of these 5 people competing against each other, they are spread across the value chain where they are each other's customer. So they now give money to each other and are able to work with each other. But then above that, because of their services, they are also able to target the bigger Australian community, right? Which is why there's so many people who would have a need for credit card, for brand design, for restaurants, for food delivery, that you can target beyond African entrepreneurs. So we solve the problem 2 in 1, where instead of competing with each other, we support each other by being each other's customers and suppliers. And then we are also able to turn our attention more towards serving other people in the Australian community beyond ourselves. So there are a number of them that I could have talked about, but just not to keep it long, these 2 things, as I said, are like the 2 main things that are killing us. Of course, there's the obvious thing that because many of us have come to Australia as migrants or refugees and we're not born here, we don't have the level of local networks and local understanding of how businesses work. So that's a struggle, but that's something that, many businesses face and have to get through it. And that's a different topic altogether. But in terms of what we can control much easily, these are the 2 things that I can talk about. Being deliberate business people, ensuring that we go into sectors and industries that target the broader Australian community instead of things that are quintessentially African and therefore target the African market, and find ways in which we can work with each other where we can be each other's customers and suppliers rather than being each other's competitors.
Good. Let me again remind the members of our audiences that we will appreciate you making comment and asking questions to our guest. We're talking tonight about marketing and specifically how that relates to many small African Australian businesses and I would say African businesses in general, and looking at how they may be able to market their services a little differently to be able to achieve more success. Now, let me ask you, Sam, should African entrepreneurs then market their service, their businesses differently from, I suppose they are targeting the African communities, but they also may want to target the broader community in Australia. Should they have different strategies for these 2 groups of customers?
Well, Clyde, this is an interesting question. I guess it depends. It depends on who your target market is. Obviously, no one customer is like the other. And so I would say that it depends on who you're targeting. My campaign is that you build a business that targets a broader Australian community. Now, your target market can be specific in terms of a certain demographic or lifestyle, but it should not be ethnic. That is my point. It should not be ethnic. So, for example, you're targeting, so you rent trucks, so you're targeting anybody above the age of 18 who has a driving license or has has disposable income, and enough disposable income, meets this type of lifestyle, and so on. In that case, then you're looking at a broader Australian community, right? So your positioning in terms of how you sell yourself is more focusing on how this persona or this type of person would find value from renting a truck from you. Unlike, and that should be the focus. I'm not a fan of ethnic just being, I think we should go beyond. I think we've done that enough, and that is what is sort of keeping us small. So to be able to do better, I think that in that regard, we should be able to build a focus on consumers or customers who are not necessarily ethnic. Race or ethnicity should not be a basis of defining your customers. I think now it depends on the business in which you are in, but my encouragement is let's look at businesses that allow us to take advantage of the 24 plus million people in Australia, rather than just limiting it in the hundreds of thousands of Africans that we have living in Australia. Any customer that you choose, then you're required to obviously approach that customer differently. You have to speak the person's marketing language. You have to explain to them why there is value in what you're giving them. Why, for example, renting a truck from you is much better than renting from, say, Budget Direct, or even going to Bunnings, and why it is better to rent from you. What are the benefits that you give? Is it better because you give better pricing, which I think your prices are really good? I'll take this opportunity to advertise your truck rental.
Because you've been a customer too at some point.
I've been a customer as well, yeah. So your prices are because of price? Is it because of other added-on services? Is it because your process of hiring your trucks are less hassle compared to other ones? Is it because you maintain a relationship where, for example, you actually follow up on how the house moving went? Something that you can do, Clyde. How I know you came to rent the track for this. How did it go? Just a short call. How did it go? Was it good? Awesome. I hope you enjoy the new house. Just that word. That's right. So these are things that you can do. No, it depends. So the rules of marketing are true ever and always if you understand your target market. But Clyde, I am preaching hard and encouraging people, let's stop ethnic marketing. Let's stop quintessential. I think it's part of the systemic problems that we talked about when we talk about racial issues and so on. Just too quintessentially, we should move above that, because it's a huge market out there and we are missing out on the opportunities in it.
All right. Now, you mentioned earlier about the study you did with Melbourne University targeting African Australian entrepreneurs. Overall, I'm not sure if that continues, but overall, what have you learned so far? What are some of the insight you can share with us? That has been happening obviously here in Melbourne, Australia, in Victoria, and it could be a different thing from other spaces and other locations in Australia and beyond. But with regards to this specific study, what have you learned? What can you share?
Well, thanks for bringing up. So with the program that Clyde is referring to is the Blue Now African Business Masterclass program. It's in collaboration with University of Melbourne's Melbourne Social Equity Institute and the Scanlon Foundation. It's also supported by the Victoria Multicultural Commission. And essentially what we're doing is we recognize, the challenges that African Australian entrepreneurs face. So we've built more or less like a mini MBA program that will be delivered at the University of Melbourne to help African Australians to be able to build the basic business know-how in order to be able to grow their business. Now, we've just finished the recruitment process, so we've just selected our first class. We'll be starting we'll be our first cohort, and we'll be starting classes in August. So we've just sent out congratulatory letters, and so we are about to deliver the program itself. So maybe after that, I'll have more learning to tell you once we get on. Now, if there is anybody watching you who is interested in it and it's a business owner, even though we've closed application and everything, get in touch with me and I see if I can make an executive decision if we can really get you on. But we've closed everything. But if you're really, really keen, you can get in touch with me and I would see. But so far, the things that we've learned, Clyde, I think I've talked about some of the learnings that we've had. But I think one of the key things that we also learned is a lack of mentorship among African Australian business. So, and it's a problem that many small businesses share. But that's something that we're doing differently. So with this program, all our applicants, all the businesses, all the entrepreneurs who will be joining will be assigned mentors, joining after the program, who will then guide them, as they make business decisions and they go on. So I think that is something that is very important. And, I speak to you and other people who have successful business in the community to offer more mentorship to the younger people, so that to teach them the tricks of the trade, how to navigate things. You make yourself available on things that you can help, because things like marketing. We'll be teaching marketing, sales. We'll be teaching finance, strategy, understanding Australian business culture, managing people, leadership. These are all things we teach in the program. But after that is done, mentoring is important. So that is something that I've learned is really, really important. And I would encourage that, Clyde, you and other people who are successful continue to do this and support other people in that regard. But also, I think that it's, Clyde, the future is promising, because we've seen some young African Australians do some very interesting businesses. Those who applied, and we've seen the type of business they're doing, the turnover is really incredible. So the future is really, really bright.
Well, the future is broad, and that's a very good thing. And that's what we're trying to encourage through this program, trying to sensitize the community on the need to build economic power through entrepreneurship. And it's important to learn. It's important to network. It's important to pay attention to those things that actually will make a big difference in how people develop their businesses. This is normally the time when we take questions, which unfortunately, surprisingly, I don't know why today there are not many questions. Often we have lots more questions than we can answer them. But I mean, I've seen a few comments here about that. I suppose before we finish, what would be some of the things you would tell? And again, just for those who are still watching, and we got about over 25 people who are watching us right now. If you have a question, please ask, and we'll get the guest to answer in relation to marketing, business, or anything that may be relating to these two things or something in between. And just enter your question, and we'll be able to view it and be able to put it to the guest. But while we're waiting for that, tell us what would be some of, if you had to advise three things to any African Australian entrepreneur or somebody wanting to get into business in the Australian context, what would you tell them and how they should go ahead in relation to that, specifically how they should think of marketing their businesses?
Well, Clyde, thanks. I think the first thing that I would say to you is do it. That's the first thing that I would say to you is do it. There is, I think the biggest challenge to starting any business is actually getting your ass off and doing it, because it's daunting if you think about it. So I would say do it. But remember, my mantra I learned very early on is think big, start small, start now. So it's good to have a vision of where you want to take your business to. Always have a vision and start something. Start something, knowing that this is where you're going, and learn. I think I've already talked about learning about the business and so on. So that is the first thing that I would say. The second thing is always reach out for help, because there are lots of resources in this country. There are lots of resources, lots of people, and the systems. And I think that's the slight advantage that we have. You know, if you live in Australia, the systems are much better. They work. So it's important that you try to learn, because the rules are different, but they work. So reach out, ask, do your research, ask people who have done it, and try and learn as much as possible. So you start, but always know that there's just so much support out there, you know, from small businesses, Victoria, to even the ATO, to the communities. That, you know, there are smaller communities all around. There are, you know, big programs like the Blue Now program. I know the Incubate Foundation also run some sessions as well. There's just so much. And then, of course, don't be afraid to reach out to people like me or Clyde. You know, you look up other people who seem to be doing work in the area, whether it's marketing or sales or, you know, product design. Reach out to them and ask questions. You'd be surprised. Most of the time, they are willing to just speak to you and spend time with you and give you ideas. So that is the second thing that I would add. The third thing that I would say is product, service, product, service. I've already talked about the obsession with the customers, but remember, the reason why anybody comes to you in the first place is because they want to buy something from you that you're selling. So make sure whatever you're selling works and it's good. Make sure if you're renting a truck, make sure the truck works. Make sure it's comfortable, make sure it's not hazardous, and make sure that it really delivers and it works as it's supposed to. And if it's you know, as an online-based system, as a tech-based thing, make sure it works. I cannot tell you, look, anytime a customer comes to use your product, it's what we marketers call moment of truth. It is the best form of advertising, because if it works, they know that what you're saying you can do, you can really do it. If it doesn't work, that's it, you've lost them. So I would say make sure that you spend time on your product. Spend time building your product. If it's food that you're selling, make sure that you actually have spent time in learning your craft and putting out your best foot forward in the first instance, and then you can build from it. So those are the three things that I would say, in addition to all the other things I've talked about, including looking at the broader market, being obsessed about the customer, and being deliberate about your brand.
All right. So I would certainly want to ask you more questions and then get more answers, because I'm learning at the same time as I'm that's just beneficial for me as an individual in relation to this media role that I have here. But unfortunately, we are running out of time, and
Yeah.
I guess I would want to invite you next time to continue this topic, because I think it's very important for those who are in business. Although we are trying to actually get more of those people who are already in business who may want to come into the show. We're probably trying to organize some sort of panel where we can talk more about this thing. But because of time, unfortunately, we have to stop here. Dr. Samuel Appau, we want to say thank you for your time to Afroshine Live here at Africa Media Australia. We appreciate that, and we hope to see you sometime very soon. I don't know if you have a last word before we conclude.
Clyde, not much to say. I think the reason why we didn't get too many questions is you've asked all the brilliant and wonderful questions that people, not a mark of a good journalist, you've asked the questions that people would otherwise have asked. And it's been a fun conversation. And I'm glad that I'm able to contribute some ideas. If anybody is keen on getting in touch, you can just search my name on LinkedIn, send me a message, or even on Facebook through Messenger, and I'll be happy to connect. But thanks for giving us your time, and I hope you stay safe and take care of yourself.
Absolutely, stay safe and take care of yourself, and come back on Thursday. Next Friday we are talking to Dr. Victor Purton, who's a barrister, businessman, and a chief optimist officer. He runs an organization that looks at optimism, business, and economy. So we'll be talking to him about some of the prospects for Africa. So that for next time. Until then, stay blessed, and the confinement is going to be over soon. So get ready to get into action again. Thanks, Dr. Sam. We'll talk to you again later.
My pleasure. Take care.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.